Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And first of all, may I thank the Honourable Member for Erith and Thamesmead for tabling this debate. It's something I was keen to do for the Equalities team because it's something I've taken a long interest in my whole time in public life in terms of working on equalities. Not always on this area, but it is something I wanted to pay attention to. I'd also like to thank those colleagues who have come along to support and those who have intervened to make specific points. It is an important, often adjournment debates can be, because at the end of the day, can sometimes think that people don't think they're important, but they are. So I do appreciate everyone who's come along to support and take part. And during Black History Month, we rightly recognise the contribution of Black Britons to our national life and history, from the Windrush generation, who helped, as the Honourable Lady said, rebuild this great country after the war, helped to rebuild the NHS and continue to run the NHS alongside others. Those Black Britons, and we pay tribute to them, who have saved countless lives working in the NHS through the pandemic. And I will ensure, I don't have an answer to the specific question the Honourable Lady raised about this support, but I will make sure that my friend, the Minister for Women and Equalities, does respond fully. And generally speaking, if there's anything I don't cover, I will make sure that my colleague writes to any particular member. If they contact me with any questions that I've not answered, I'm more than happy to ensure that my ministerial colleague writes back in full. I do think that it is right that we pay tribute to those who take part in our life, especially those who are coming forward from the Black community. I was delighted to see the Paralympic gold medalist Kadina Cox at the first leg of the Commonwealth Games baton relay in Birmingham earlier this month. In terms of the relay going from Buckingham Palace, it was quite inspirational to see one of our leading Olympians lead the baton. And her story is truly remarkable, and she's just one of many of the inspiring Black role models across our society in sports, arts, government and business. And if I may, Mr Deputy Speaker, I'm going to embarrass the Honourable Member for Hackney North and Stoke Newington. She won't remember, but quite a long time ago, I was at a dinner which she shared with Michael Portillo, and it was a prize from a Stonewall fundraising dinner. And I was sat alongside her for the whole evening. And I have to say, and I'm sorry to embarrass you, that a Tory politician is going to say to you that you were a role model. And I remember saying to you at the time, those of you who may not be old enough to remember, there used to be a back page of the Sunday Times magazine about a day in the life of. And I remember saying to the Honourable Lady that she was the epitome of a constituency MP, and how I thought that was absolutely inspiring. So I'm sorry to embarrass you for praise from this side of the House. But it was truly it might have been a long time ago, but I have to say it has never left me. But as the Honourable Lady, the member said in leading the debate, following the events of last year, Britain has engaged in a thorough examination of racial inequality. And in response, this government has carefully examined the evidence and data, and we believe it is right to recognise where progress has been made, but also that we need to tackle barriers that still stand. We can't level up the country. Sorry.
I'm grateful to the Minister giving way. In just over an hour's time, York Labour are proposing that York becomes an anti-racist and inclusive city. However, we don't want this just to be a name tag, but to be about an action plan, about our path for the future. Would the government consider funding such initiatives in order to ensure that that aspiration becomes a reality?
The Honourable Lady's tempted me outside of my portfolio, and so I can't spending commitments, otherwise I think the Chancellor my ministerial career might be cut very short. It's been 6 weeks and I'd like it to go a little bit longer, but I will ensure that my officials will take that away and get the Honourable Lady a full response. I can't promise it will be a response she likes, but it will certainly be a response that I think is something, as you say, it's something that the government should consider. But going back to the issue about levelling up, we can't genuinely level up unless we remove the obstacles that stand in the way of some of our people. And it's in this spirit that the Prime Minister established the Sewell Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities. I know people may have different views on that commission, but let's park those and look for the good rather than seek to dwell on what we disagree on. The Commission did publish its report earlier this year, and it showed that racism and discrimination remains a factor in shaping life's outcomes. For instance, discrimination against names that are recognised as not being traditionally British exists when CVs are reviewed in the jobs market, for one example. And this should not be happening in Britain in 2021. However, the Commission found that there were disparities between ethnic groups where disparities between ethnic groups exist. Factors other than racism are often the principal cause, and that's something that needs to be explored. I can assure the House that this government is intent on doing everything in its power to drive out discrimination. For instance, we are shocked by the torrents of online abuse our footballers received for no other reason than their skin colour. And I hope that our online safety bill remains ambitious and that it will help hold those who are cowed enough to hide behind online abuse. I hope that they will be held to account. If I could turn just to a couple of questions that the Honourable Lady proposed in debate mentioned, and turn for firstly black maternal health. Our NHS makes the UK one of the safest places in the world to have a baby, but every death is a tragedy. Last month, NHS England published a targeted plan to improve outcomes for mothers and babies from ethnic minority groups, a plan which will provide almost 7 million of support to local maternity systems. And our most senior midwife, Professor Dunkley Bent, is leading important work in this area. We trust her judgment and value the brilliant work she is doing. And of course, with operational independence, we can ensure that the NHS listen and take heed of what we want it to do, whilst allowing them to get on with their professional judgment. Specialist ethnic training for the police on domestic abuse was another issue that was raised, and it's one that I fully understand. A slight segue. It's as part of my equalities brief, I've equally been raising the ability of the police to respond to same-sex domestic violence. And I think the Honourable Lady raises a very good point. Very often, our police, who do an amazing job in many areas, sometimes are not fully attuned to what domestic violence is really about. And I know that domestic abuse affects a wide and disparate group, and a one-size-fits-all approach is not appropriate, particularly for those with specific needs like ethnic minority victims. But, of course...
Thank you, Minister, for giving way. I think one of the things that I want to recommend is that you meet with Sister Space, because they have done quite a lot of work, particularly on this and Valerie's law, and I feel very strongly they'll be able to help the government in terms of making sure you implement, the government implements something that would really benefit a lot of individuals from across the country, and also the police force, and it goes in line with what's happened recently in terms of working towards the government's updated walk strategy.
I thank the Honourable Lady, and I will ensure that my ministerial colleague gets that message. I can't commit to her diary, tempting though it is, to ensure that she looks at that. What we are doing is ensuring that we continue to try and encourage and cajole forces to take the College of Policing's Domestic Abuse Matters training, which includes specific training on the different impacts of domestic abuse on black and minority ethnicity communities. But the Honourable Lady makes a very good point. Speaking to those groups who could speak with a voice of knowledge and of probably experience. I don't know the group, but quite often these groups have personal experience which is far more powerful than any politician talking about the subject. So I do think it's a very valid point, and I will urge my ministerial colleague to take up that offer of meeting. The Honourable Lady also talked about diversifying the curriculum, and she's right that children should learn all aspects of British history, and we must teach them about the contributions of Britons of all ethnicities who have made our country what it is today. Now, the flexibility within the National History curriculum gives teachers the opportunity to focus on ethnic minority voices and experiences. Their contribution to our shared British history can and should be taught. We know that the vast majority of schools are already doing this, whether it's through discussing national events such as the Bristol bus boycott or the soldiers from across the world who fought alongside Britain in both world wars. So I think the Honourable Lady has made some remarkably strong points. One of the things I always commit if I am covering a debate for a colleague, which is, although Equality is part of the Equalities team, is to make sure that the points raised are followed through on. I don't believe in standing at the dispatch box saying, yes, I'll ask a colleague to look at it without making sure that happens. And I will ensure that the notes I've taken today, that my colleague follows through on them.